Images like these make me feel an immense amount of nostalgia and probably make you feel the same way. All those late nights spent playing Minecraft, not worrying about anything, just having fun. Of course, we feel happy that our childhoods happened. We got to experience all these things that now give us nostalgia, but on the other hand, we feel sadness that we'll never go back to those memories ever again. Our childhood and those moments are now in the past, forever a part of our history. In recent years, however, nostalgia has embedded itself into pop culture, with YouTube videos about 90s, 2000s, and 2010s nostalgia getting millions of views. Something about looking back on our past seems to fascinate us. This retrospect into our childhood can be bittersweet. These videos and nostalgic media in general can make you feel melancholic. They make you smile, laugh, cry, and sometimes they can be used to scare you. If you've been on YouTube for any amount of time, you probably have been recommended one of these videos. They're a little different from the typical 2010s nostalgia videos. They focus on old Minecraft or memories from your childhood. Yet, instead of looking at them through a melancholic lens, they choose to focus on the slight unease you feel while viewing nostalgic content. They put vignettes around the imagery, they play a slower version of the nostalgic background music, they have weirdly creepy titles, and most importantly, they use more striking imagery. Clearly, this nostalgia isn't meant to be happy or sad. It's meant to scare you. People have taken these slightly uneasy feelings from reminiscing on nostalgic memories and based entire genres off of them. The most prevalent example being the analog horror scene. People like Alex Kister and Martin Walls have had success with series like The Mandela Catalog and The Walton Files. Analog horror, with its old VHS-like static and nods to the 90s, is meant to tap into our sense of nostalgia and scare us. But as time passes, our collective memories shift to a more recent era. The nostalgia we once had for the 90s is now being replaced by nostalgia for the late 2000s and early 2010s. This shift in nostalgia has led to the rise of a new genre known as digital horror. Creators like old Minecraft re-uploads, Brandon Works, and Gunslinger Pro 2009 have started popping up to fill this new genre of nostalgic horror, using the aesthetics and technology of the early days of the internet to tell an unsettling story. These videos make you think about your own experiences playing these games. They present creepy ideas that make you look back on your memories in a different light. Nostalgic horror does a thing that no other form of horror can ever do. Sure, Alien was scary, but you hardly ever found it relatable. With nostalgic horror, you can relate this stuff to your own experiences. What if something was actually haunting you in your old Minecraft world? Or what if the Gmod ragdolls you were constantly playing around with were actually alive? Nostalgic horror poses questions that can only be answered by looking back at your past. And this retrospect into your past can often be disturbing, as now you're looking at it through a different lens. It's the same thing with gaming. Many people have made successful horror games using PS1 era graphics. These dated visuals not only give people who played video games around that time a sense of nostalgic dread, but they also make the game itself scarier. For example, the original Silent Hill's famous fog came from the PS1 not having very good render distance. Despite the classic Silent Hill fog coming from uncooperative hardware, it instantly became a staple of those games. As you've probably heard time and time again, constraints inspire creativity. People have started embracing the older style of horror games more and more, with games like Lost in Vivo, Nun Massacre, or Night of the Consumers. There's something about these games having dated graphics that scare me more than if they were regular horror games. They feel unreal. The PS1 horror style cements the fact that I'm nowhere close to real life, instead in this broken, savage, unrecognizable world. Power Drill Massacre is one game that uses this PS1 era horror style perfectly. The game uses several elements that are reminiscent of classics from the PS1 like Resident Evil or Silent Hill. The game utilizes the fixed camera that were a staple of the early Resident Evil games. This gives the player a limited view of their surroundings and creates a sense of tension and uncertainty as they navigate through the environment. And the game's controls are intentionally clunky and awkward, which is another hallmark of the early PS1 era of horror games. This makes it difficult for the player to maneuver their character, and it creates a sense of vulnerability and helplessness. The game also has intentionally low resolution and grainy graphics, which is reminiscent of the early days of 3D gaming. This adds to the overall sense of unease and creates a feeling of detachment from reality. The scares, however, are admittedly cheap. This would normally be a criticism, but given the fact that this is supposed to be a play on 80s slasher films, it makes sense that the game's scares come from more shock at a sudden loud noise rather than a slow burn terror. Its scares are a result of what it's trying to replicate, and I think it works wonders for the game's overall presentation. However, these PS1 era graphics go beyond games you can play. Petscop is a web series that takes the aesthetics of the PS1 era of gaming and transforms it into a horror masterpiece. The series is presented as if it's a let's play of an obscure and unfinished game called Petscop, which was supposedly created in the late 1990s. The game itself has an eerie and unsettling atmosphere, which is amplified by the fact that the gameplay is glitchy and distorted. The genius of Petscop lies in the ways it uses the PS1 aesthetic to create a sense of nostalgia and unease. The graphic, sound effects, and music all evoke memories of playing games on the original PlayStation, but there's something off about them. The visuals are distorted, the music is slowed down, and the sound effects are often dissonant and unsettling. This feeling can also extend to actual games from back in the day, such as the original Doom. You may be wondering why I bring this up. After all, Doom is about ripping and tearing through hordes of demons whilst grinning ear to ear. What does this have to do with nostalgic horror? While the combat was fun and enjoyable, I always felt a sense of foreboding while playing Doom. Like I was trapped in a place so alien and absolutely incomparable to the world I lived in. The sole human left alive in a world filled with monsters, corridors lined with tortured souls. All of this dread in the environment made the world of Doom feel unsettling. The low-fidelity graphics also help cement the fact that I'm in a world where nothing makes sense. A world so far from reality that it almost feels incomprehensible by human standards, which adds to the horror of the overall game, intentionally or not. Clearly, I'm not alone in this observation, because this concept of a more horror-driven Doom was explored more in Doom 3. Some loved it and some hated it. I personally loved it. However, the newer Doom games don't seem to follow in the original's footsteps. Despite loving Doom Eternal, I never really cared about the environment or the atmosphere of the game. All I did was rip and tear, which admittedly was really fun, but I never got that feeling I did from the original Doom. That is until I played. Dusk is a landmark in the rise of a new kind of shooter known as boomer shooters. They take inspiration from older games such as Doom or Quake, and they're a lot of fun. And some of them even use the same smudgy graphics of the classics. But unlike other boomer shooters like Ultra Kill, Dusk doesn't use its late 90s graphics to make you feel nostalgic, it uses it to scare you. Just like the PS1 horror style, the game's old graphics help cement the idea of a hostile foreign world incomparable to your own, as if you're trespassing into a place no human should be. These old graphics also assist with what the game is all about in the first place. Dusk's roots clearly lie in cosmic horror. The old graphics of Dusk help to make the world feel inhumane and unreal. Not only do the old graphics perfectly capture the aesthetics of late 90s shooters, but they also allow the player's imagination to run wild. And when your imagination runs wild, it'll always find something to scare you. The early levels start in the town of Dusk, then you slowly transition into torture chambers, and finally into eldritch abstractions. I don't think any of this transitioning into a darker and darker world thing would work without the old graphics. These old and nostalgic graphics have always found a way to be prevalent and scary in every single corner of the horror genre, which I think is another reason that images like these are more than just nostalgic. They make me feel things I can't explain. The old version of Minecraft is more than just a source of nostalgia, it evokes an unexplainable sense of liminality. Clearly I'm not alone in the sense that nostalgia can be terrifying. There's a reason why you can find countless works of nostalgia horror all across the internet. The rise of nostalgia-based horror media has provided a unique and relatable form of horror for many people. By tapping into our collective memories of childhood experiences, creators have found a way to make their works resonate with a wide audience. Whether it's the clunky controls and low-resolution graphics of early PS1-era horror games, or the unsettling imagery and music of analog horror videos, these works evoke a sense of nostalgia while also inducing fear and unease. These nostalgic horror works demonstrate the power of constraints to inspire creativity. By embracing the limitations of outdated technologies and aesthetics, creators have found new ways to terrify audiences. And as technology continues to advance and our collective memories shift to new eras, it's likely that new forms of nostalgic horror will emerge, offering a fresh take on the genre, while tapping into our shared experiences of growing up in the digital age. So if you have the opportunity, consider revisiting an old Minecraft version. You may be surprised to find the experience is more disturbing than you remember.